Good morning. It's time to talk about Chapter 10. We're looking at socio-emotional development in the play years, coming to the end of another unit. This one has been really exciting because we're not just looking at children on those first couple of years where there's a lot of similarities in development because there are the essential basic kind of skills that we all learn and need to learn. We're starting to see areas in which there's a diversity of development based on different life experiences, different exposure to being in school, exposure to preschool, exposure to parents and caregivers and different people taking care of the children. And we're also going to see that we're starting to see the introduction to another kind of influence, and that's friends and peers, children, the children same age children, maybe children who are raised in similar situations. So let's take a look at this. Now, first of all, we're talking about socio-emotional or psychosocial development. So first of all, we're going to understand ourselves a little bit better. We need to comprehend what's going on emotionally, first of all. Um, and as with most units, we're going to first look at a stage theory, a theory that puts childhood in stages. This is the stage that we call initiative versus guilt. And so track with me here. First, the first stage that we've looked at psychosocially is trust. So a newborn infant has to figure out who he or she can trust. The second stage that we saw was autonomy. If you trust, if you know who you can trust, you have the foundation then to be autonomous, to do things for yourself. Now we're adding something called initiative. So if we can do things for ourselves, the next step is to do things in our own way, to make a plan. Okay, this is what we want children to learn. Um, if you say to your child, wash the dishes. Okay, well, would a 3-year-old wash the dishes? Let's say sweep the floor. Okay, that's a little simpler. So you say to the child, sweep the floor. First of all, you want the child to be able to do it. That's autonomy. They can hold the broom and sweep and that kind of thing. Next, you say initiative. You want them to know initiative because you don't want to have to stand there and watch them sweep. You want to be able to leave the room and know that they're going to sweep the floor so they can make a plan to do it. Now, think about that, how important it would be that we would be prepared for school and how important initiative would be there. If you in school, your child has autonomy, so that means that the teacher says sit at your desk, and at your desk do these five math problems. Initiative then would be what's necessary for them to figure out how to do those math problems. See, so it's making the plan, learning how to do it. So the opposite part is guilt, and this is where probably I'm going to say parents, but really any caregivers come in. They say, "Well, you're doing it wrong, or you're doing it incorrectly, or even you're wrong to come up with things on your own, to do it your own way. You should follow the rules." Okay, you should follow the rules, but you also have to learn to make your own rules in situations, because most situations that we have to undergo, there are not rules for them. So we have to figure out the rules. This is also this initiative versus guilt, where if you've ever played a game with a child like 3 or 4 years old, you'll know that what they're doing often is changing the rules as they go. And now we could react to that saying you should never change rules, but sometimes just let them go with it and see what happens. It's a great way to understand children and why they do what they're doing. Um, it may not necessarily have to do with just they're trying to put something at their own advantage. It could be that they really want to understand what is it that we have, the stages of going through making a plan. How do we go from here to there? And what are the stages involved? So that's a lot of what they're developing. Something else we're looking at in this age is emotional regulation. It's not so much no longer so much about having the emotions as knowing what do you do with them. So when you're really sad and nobody else is sad, what is the appropriate way to express that sadness? And also there's a social context because I mean if you're sitting up in a classroom and you're mourning your loved one who just passed away, maybe you don't want to just let loose with a in the middle of class. It would be understandable if you're really sad, of course. There would be an appropriate time to let that out. Probably wouldn't be in the middle of work or in the middle of class or something like that. So there's emotion. That's called emotional regulation. The next part that we'll see in the book is moral development. And what that means is that you have to see yourself as a moral being. That means that for you, there would be preferences for what is right and what is wrong. Now, this is the age at which we're really starting to master this concept of right and wrong. Some people don't believe there's ever anything called right and wrong, but those are the people who will find that they really do believe there's right and wrong. Because you might say, oh, well, there's nothing really wrong with stealing somebody else's stuff until you get your own stuff stolen. Oh, and then you become a moral being awful quick. So if you're one of those folks who was raised to believe that everything is relative, yeah, right, right. You then you wake up and live in the real world and smell the coffee. We're all moral beings and we all do believe there is a right and wrong. Um, and, consequently, our early childhood, and let me say this early children, I'm talking about 2 or 3, 4 years old, there is a right or wrong, but most of that right or wrong is really based on the authority. What does the parent say? Okay, well, we don't carry that the rest of our lives. I'm 53 years old. It's not that I don't care what my parents think. They're not around anymore, so they wouldn't really have a lot to say it. I have to make decisions about what's right and wrong myself, and often when I'm alone. So it becomes right and wrong becomes less about what other people say and more about what you know is right and wrong. This is called conscience. We all have them. Uh, if you don't have a conscience, stay away from me because anything goes. People without conscience become serial killers. We need a conscience. I'm making jokes about what's probably not really funny, but truthfully, there is a portion of your brain that you use to ascertain right and wrong, to think about things like that, to see or at least to comprehend what would hurt somebody else, that kind of thing. All right, so children learn that. Something else we're going to see in this chapter is we're starting to understand the qualities of parenting. Um, I'm not standing in judgment saying what's good parenting and what's not. I will say that the best parents are the parents who are warm, accepting, and understand the diversity of their children. That usually works out well. We're also going to see, along with that warmth dimension, we're seeing another dimension that a good parent will establish rules. And the reason is because we need to learn to work within a system of rules. Um, Not for everything. You do want to think outside the box some, but you don't want to always think outside the box because if you as a parent are just going to say, well, I'm not going to impose rules on my child, I want my child to figure that out, you're setting your child up for failure, because they're going to go out there in the real world and somebody's going to slap them down and say, no, you can't do that. So it is good for parents to give some idea about what's acceptable here, what's not. And I'm not just talking about right and wrong, I'm talking about what's acceptable and not. And then also see, how do we get there? So the child is also developing an understanding of how to make decisions, how to say, okay, this is what I decide to do. There are times that you're going to break a rule, or you're going to say, I'm going to do that anyway, eh, because you want to, and also because you do understand and appreciate consequences and know that there are consequences, and they accept those consequences when they come. Okay, one last point on this chapter is a discussion of peer relations, friendship. I've already mentioned that I think that this is the age at which I think most of us start to appreciate people outside of our homes, and we'll see those kinds of relationships developing. Uh, Consequently, we're going to see the importance of play. What is it? What do children do when they play? What are the important skills that they're developing? Um, I don't think many people would say it's important to direct children's play. Unfortunately, when your child is in preschool, they get that a lot. This is what we're going to do. And unfortunately, it doesn't give children an opportunity to develop that initiative I was talking about earlier, by doing things their own way. When you're reading through this chapter, note the different kinds of play. That's going to kind of teach us a lot about what do we learn, what do we need to learn. Play is primarily the context in which we're learning at this age, 3, 4, 5 years old. Okay, well, y'all have a wonderful week. It's been great to talk about chapter 10, and I'll see you again for chapter 11.